Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am Courtney Anderson, and I thank you so much for taking the time to join me today and be part of the program. On today's show, we have an episode that is coming from our Joyful Art of Business series. And of course, our Joyful Art of Business is all about us looking at what we do with our time professionally. This could be our volunteer work. It could be serving in our household. It could be paid work. And asking ourselves, what is it about this that we do? I'm going to call it our business. That's uniquely us. That's creative. That's the artistic part of our lives and in terms of our work. So if your work is in your household and you have a special way that you do your laundry, I'm going to argue that that's artistic. I'm going to continue to argue that there's something you can bring to any endeavor that is your special way of seeing things and doing things and expressing things. And it's almost, sometimes people argue with me and they'll say, all this, positive stuff, it's so silly. It's not art. It's just a job, or it's just volunteer work, or it's just somebody who's a stay-at-home family member taking care of a household. And my argument would be, okay, well, if that's true, if there's nothing unique that we bring to anything, right? It's just a task. Then how on earth do we have people who are professional singers? Let's just take this, a professional singer. And the singer sings the same song other people have sung. Sometimes they even call those standards, right? It's a song other people have sung. That song may be, 80 years old. There may have been, countless number of other people who've recorded that song and released that song. And yet you can still have someone come along and sing a song that everybody knows the words to. And do it in a way that it becomes uniquely theirs. I'm even thinking about, in the United States, the late singer Whitney Houston sang the national anthem. It's just literally, a government kind of song. And sang it in a way where it became so identified with her version of this. Now, how many people in the United States or been in the United States have heard the songs? Many people have sung the song. It's often sung at public events. And yet she took this song that everybody knows to a large extent in the culture and did it in a way that it became hers, her version of it. And I remember after she passed, gave a speech. I was giving a speech for a government agency, actually, and they played a video of her singing that version. And it brought tears to my eyes again, right? Because they're so beautiful. So my point would be, yeah, it's the same words. Everybody knows those words. But you can do something that's done by many people or the majority of people in a way where it becomes uniquely fresh and it becomes identified with you. And if you can do it by singing a song, you can certainly do it by folding laundry. You can do it by any work that you do. And that's why I call it art. And I'll continue to believe that when we bring something of ourselves to what our task and our endeavors, it gives us that outlet for expression. It brings us little slivers of joy, and it brings meaning in some way to our lives. We all see these. These are usually international stories, right? So they'll show someone who's like a police officer or a crossing guard in a street directing traffic. When that seems like something like, okay, that's not the most difficult thing, some people would say, although I would be scared to stand in the street direct traffic. But you'll see these videos from time to time around the world where somebody who's, just sort of standing there directing traffic, but they start to do it in their own fun way. Maybe they dance a little bit, or they spin around, or they use their hands in a fun way. And again, you're just bringing that special thing about you to something that, yeah, people might say it's mundane or boring or average, but not when you make it your own. And that's what the Joyful Art of Business is about. So in this series, our show today, for all of that uplifting, optimistic introduction, Our specific show episode today is, who told you that you weren't good enough? Why do you believe them? Who told you that you weren't good enough? Why do you believe them? Now, this is one of the shows as where I'm going through the show notes and creating the show lineup, and what happens is it's like any other work activity, constantly brainstorming potential show ideas, and there's like a huge running list, like a master list of potential show ideas. That's what they are, and they're just constantly, they come from all kind of places. They come from you. They come from community members who share ideas and concerns and suggestions. They come from things in my own life that I'll think, wow, that's an interesting suggestion or idea. Or somebody will ask me a legal question often when I'm practicing law, mostly at my volunteer legal clinics that I take part in. And I'll think, oh, that's a great show topic, right? Or someone will ask me a business question, and maybe a student or someone that I'm teaching in a formal business program, or I'm conducting corporate education training, and somebody asks me a question. So it comes from all different types of places. And then there's this running sort of tally of ideas, and then when I sit down and start looking at scheduling shows and recording, then I go through and start trying to figure out what is this a good idea? Is that a good idea? And of course I do that with people that I work with. We sort of say, maybe do this one or that one. Okay, so the interesting thing was this show topic, it jumped out off of the page. And it relates to a lot of the other programs that we do, and it relates actually to the underpinning, right? The underpinning of this whole concept of, surpassing your goals. And so much of why we don't surpass our goals or even meet our goals is because we sabotage ourselves. We get caught up in these very elaborately constructed narratives that we use as a rationalization, it's a lie, for why we're not going to do or haven't done or haven't done lately or don't do to the best of our ability. And it's so much is predicated on this idea that you think you're not. You think you're not good enough. You think you're not smart enough. You think you're not capable enough. You think you're not strong enough. You think you're not powerful enough. You think you're not good enough. And so it's all so much of this. It's such a cliche, but so much of what we're doing. And one of the things that when I started consulting and corporate training and corporate education programs, the thing that shocked me, I kept thinking, this is I think, well, this is a great company, right? Or it's a worldwide brand, or like, how on earth can things not be fantastically awesome here all the time? But so much of it doesn't have anything to do with the business necessarily. Like what the business product or services, or what the branding or any of that. What it has to do with is the people, and the people aren't even able to focus on the business tasks or a legal task, or an HR task or an educational task, because we just get caught up in our own minds in ways that are really, again, they're self-sabotaging. And so much of that sabotage comes from somebody turning against themselves and doing things, overtly and, sort of covertly to fail. And it's the idea that self-fulfilling prophecy, right? People think, oh, I knew I wasn't good enough. Sure enough, I wasn't. Well, yeah, because while you were so caught up in why you're not good enough, you missed, deadlines. You turned in poor work product. You yelled and screamed at people that you work with. I mean, I can give you a laundry list of reasons why bad outcomes occur, but usually when I'm looking at individuals and not systems, it's going to go back to some sort of self-sabotage, which is often based on the negative view of the person. So the person can have a fantastic job, or a fantastic family, or a fantastic whatever externally, by whatever measurement you would want, right? If it's a family leader, you would say, well, look, everybody's healthy. And they say, well, yeah, everyone's healthy. And you say, okay, and people are, engaging in growth activities and becoming, fuller and richer and more knowledgeable individuals, whether they're young people or seniors. And yeah, that's true. And people are loving and communicate that love and trust and respect. Well, yeah, but I'm just never going to be a good enough parent. What? Yeah. Um, and again, this is just pervasive. It's everywhere on the planet. Everywhere I've ever been. Um, I've talked to people in Africa and in Asia and in um, North America and in Europe and in Australia, and you hear the same things. And you hear it, and again, I hear it in volunteer work, I hear it in paid work. Oh, goodness. So, who told you that you weren't good enough? Is the first part of the show topic. And I think it's really important because in all the years that I've been trying to provide solutions, and that's what I do as a lawyer, and that's what I do as a professor at universities, and now the University of Maryland, University College, and that's what I do as a consultant, and that's what I do as a corporate education specialist, and that's what I do as a writer, and that's what I do as a landlord, and that's what I do as a volunteer. I mean, I'm just trying to fix things, which is a whole nother, sometimes potentially great, endeavor. And sometimes that can be self-destructive depending on how I'm applying it. But so much of what I'm doing, the obstacle is somebody giving me some narrative that basically gets to a point where it's that someone somewhere, something has given them the message they're not good enough at whatever it is. And that is why they begin to engage in this really counterproductive and self-destructive behavior. So I'm talking to a manager, and I'm trying to figure out sort of what's happening, why we're having high turnover, or why the revenue numbers aren't what they're supposed to be, and then I start understanding some of the behavior that the manager's engaging in, inconsistent feedback, lack of transparency. There's distrust among their team members. So I'm talking to the manager, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. What's leading to this. And at some core level, they're going to give some narrative, and it's going to come down to, oh, I just, my first job, I tried my best, and, but it didn't go well, and I was, I was demoted, and I had to tell my parents, and I was so ashamed. I'll never forget the look on my dad's face when I was demoted, and he was so ashamed of me, and he said, I'm disappointed in you. And ever since then, I just think about that, and I just get so, overwhelmed, and I just don't think I can really do it, and I'm not, good enough. I don't care if it's some sort of childhood event that happened. I don't care if it's something that happened in somebody's first job or that happened in the most recent job. I don't care if it's something that happened to them when they were, 2 years old or 20 years old or 60 years old. I'm even going to go so far as it could be somebody who maybe their family and their personal experiences were positive, but they believe society told them that the cultural expectations and norms, mass media told them that they're not good enough. And so that comes out where people would say, but I do my best, and oh, my family loves me, and my friends love me, and I'm so fortunate, and my work and everything, but I'm not pretty enough. I'm not skinny enough. I'm not muscular enough. I'm not beautiful enough. I'm not, people get caught up in this, and it sounds superficial and silly. Well, who told you this, right? And basically, sometimes no actual person directly told them, but they feel like they watched media or television or saw advertising, and they believe that whatever was represented in those visuals, that they aren't that in their own mind. And so in their mind, then it becomes, again, the self-destructive path that they're on. I'm not good enough. You also hear people in different societies, and this is fascinating too. These are all culturally specific, what groups get what messages. But I've been in parts of the world where I don't know all the different, let's say ethnic groups, right? So, and for good reason. When you start to investigate and see how many different types of groups there are on the planet, there's a lot more groups than you think. So if I'm sitting somewhere, for example, and I'm working, and I worked in South Africa, and so I'm talking to people, and people start talking to me about different tribes. Now, I do not know to this moment I can't sit here and list all of the different tribes in any region of Africa because there are many of them. Just like there's different ethnic groups everywhere, and there are different histories and wars and experiences that people know about. So I was talking to people, and they started explaining to me that members of some tribe aren't, I guess, viewed as the best tribe to be. I can't even remember now what exactly, and different people tell me different things. And so you'll talk to people and they'll start to have this self-image where they're not good enough. And again, nobody directly told them. And you ask them, oh no, my family, my friends, my neighbors, my schoolmates, everyone, said they were fine. I didn't have them tell me I wasn't good enough, but society tells me because I'm in this tribe, I'm not good enough. In some parts of the world I visit, people tell me, oh, society says because I'm this religion, I'm not good enough. Other parts of the world I visit, people tell me society says because of my skin color, or because of my eye shape, or because of the size of my nose, or my lips, or my body shape, or my hair texture, I'm not good enough. And they believe this. Now, it sounds silly, right? We're sitting here, adult professionals, or even if we're not yet adults. I appreciate you joining the program, but we're trying to have adult conversations, right? And it just sounds silly. I mean, if I go and I say to you, hey, look, define yourself by an advertisement or a television commercial or a movie that's imaginary, it's fictional. People would think, well, that's silly. Who would do that, right? But people do this. And I'm begging you in this show to ask yourself, are you doing this? Where are you getting the definition that you're not good enough? That's what I asked you. Who told you this? Now, sometimes people have had direct people tell them, and they'll say to me, my dad told me every day I was a failure and I wasn't good enough and he wished I was dead. Okay. That's pretty clear. In other instances, you don't have that at all. People will say, no, my family told me I was, loved, and they thought I was the most wonderful thing ever to happen to them. And they wanted to do everything they could to make me happy and be there for me. And excuse me, you'll still get the same outcome. Now, some would argue, well, if your parent, or your teacher or your neighbor or your grandmother or your first boss told you that you're an idiot and that you're a horrible person and they wish you were, had never been born. Maybe that has more meaning or weight than what you saw in a movie or a fictional visual depiction, right, in mass media. I don't actually believe that's accurate. I think that the core issue is if you believe the messenger, whoever the messenger was, then you're going to still have these really poor outcomes where you're self-destructive because at your core you believe you're, quote, not good enough. So you sabotage yourself with all types of things, right? With poor choices, with trying to hurt yourself in some way. People do it with food, people do it with exercise, people do it with work. We laugh, right? Oh, the workaholic. That's not funny. And in many societies, people literally work themselves to death. It's not a joke. So oddly, what messenger told you weren't good enough? To me, that's not the issue. The challenge is that you got the message. I'm asking you, why do you believe that messenger? So let's start with people who come with me to come and have dialogues and say, hey, look, this is not even, debatable. Literally, I have letters and emails, from my family and my relatives saying to me, you're not good enough. We hate you. We wish you were never born. You're the worst thing ever, and calling me names. That is not a joke, and I certainly have all types of exposure to that. My question would be, though, let's say it's your grandma, and grandma is the one. Grandma and your sister told you every day that you're a horrible person and you never should have been born, and they called you bad names and said you're just, a failure and the most disgusting thing on the planet. And don't think I'm exaggerating this, because I can't repeat the things that I know, people say to their family members and supposed loved ones, and they're just, obscene. So let's say that's you, when it was your grandma and your sister, and every day grandma and your sister said and did these horrible things, right? So I'm going to ask you right now, and I ask you, who told you this? And you say, well, grandma and sister told me. My sister told me literally every day of my entire life, and then she would beat me up and say horrible things to me, and go and tell things to other kids, our age, that I was a horrible person, I didn't bathe, and then other kids would tease me and throw rocks at me, and she laughed. Okay, so we've identified who it is, right? And then you'll tell me, and then every once in a while, grandma would also, chime in and say the same thing. Okay, so now we've identified who told you this, your sister and your grandmother. Not debatable. Like I said, some people have letters and more recently emails where they'll have it in writing, which is to me, wow, right? The lawyer in me thinks if you're going to say and do things like that, you probably don't want to put it in writing, but okay. People do this. Apparently now even people put it on their social media, just publicly for the world to see. This is what I think of my sister, right? Okay. So it's not really debatable. It did happen. You know who did it. You even have evidence and documentation. Here it is. I can show it to you. Some people videotape these things. All right. So we've solved the part of who told you that you weren't good enough, right? Sister and your grandma. My second part of the question, though, is why do you believe them? Let's say you say, hey, it's my sister. She's 4 years older than I am, and she's told me this literally every day of my life that I can remember. Okay. So my question is, why do you believe your sister? I'm serious. Is your sister a credible source for making decisions? Are there any other things that your sister has told you, not related to you, so not about your own failures and how horrible a person you are, but is there anything else your sister has ever said or done that makes you suspect that they might not be the best trustworthy source? In almost every case, when I ask people this, they'll say, "Oh yeah, well my sister, she's a liar. She's dishonest. I can, and they'll go into long stories about all the other horrible things her sister did." And the reason I think that these are closely related is that somebody who's going to go out of their way to consistently berate, humiliate, abuse, torture somebody else, usually they don't do that in just one instance. Usually they have other patterns that are destructive and not trustworthy. It's not like they're the most trustworthy person and you ask them and they say, oh my goodness, well my sister, no, I mean she's prime minister of our country, and she's won a Nobel Peace Prize, and she's just one of the most wonderful people on the planet, and this is the only instance where she ever did anything that wasn't trustworthy or honest, is when she told me that I'm a horrible person and I never should have been born. You don't usually see that. You usually see that somebody who's going to do these types of behaviors, who's going to tell you you're not good enough, has a reason. And they have patterns. So when I ask you, are they a credible source, should you believe them? Usually when you get into these things, especially with family of origin, and you start talking to somebody who's come out of this where they literally were told, and often abused in other ways, you are totally worthless. You don't deserve to live. People try to kill them, relatives, right? So people in those situations, you'll talk to them and you'll ask them, okay, are those people who did this to you, are they somebody that you believe or that you would trust, that that they have succeeded in surpassing their goals and that you would aspire to be? And most of the time the answer is absolutely not, right? Most of the time people say, no, they're horrible people, right? They had a lot of other problems in their life, with their own job, with their own, relationships, with their own choices, and I wouldn't want to be them at all. They're horrible people. Not just because they did horrible things to me, but they've done horrible things in other settings too, and they're miserable. They're just miserable, unhappy people. Okay, well then why do you believe them? If I went out on the street with random strangers and went and found some random stranger on the street and was doing interviews and said, was asking people, I need somebody to come here and tell me that you admit that your life is just been awful, and that you've made really poor choices, and you have, all types of, challenges as a result. So you maybe got economic challenges, maybe you addicted and abuse drugs and alcohol, or food, or exercise, or work. You're miserable. You're not balanced. You don't feel safe in your environment. And if I went and found somebody like that and then said, hey, now listen to what they have to tell you about you, you would say to me, I'm not going to trust them. What? That person's a mess. They're like a disaster. I'm not going to trust them to define me. Are you serious? But you'll do that with somebody who you were habituated to, or you had some other type of relationship with. They were a family member, they were a friend, they were a school teacher, they were your Girl Scout leader, they were your, religious leader, like whatever. And the thing is, but all the other qualities are there that would help you see that's not somebody I'm going to believe and trust. That's not somebody that I can look at the choices they've made and the outcomes they have and think, oh, yeah, that's totally the person I should follow, because it's not logical. But yet, because you had this exposure to them, for some reason, you're willing to accept that what they're telling you is true. Why would you believe this? When someone tells us something, whether it's an individual or it's media, what is their motive? Look, in the show notes, I wrote this down. What is their motive for telling me this? So it's like this: when you're dealing, especially with really young children, especially in industrialized nations, right, that are just full of mass marketing and advertising, which is fine. I mean, business needs to advertise, right? But it's when you get to a point in life, you have to teach children the difference between an advertisement, like a commercial, and something that's not an advertisement that might be true, like hopefully like the news, right? So you're trying to teach children the difference between a commercial where somebody's trying to sell me something. They want me to eat that cereal. They want me to buy that toy. Now they might be telling me things in that advertisement. This is the best toy ever. This is the greatest cereal ever. But the reason they're telling me that, their motive for telling me that, is they want me to buy this thing. So I can't trust that that really is the best toy, that really is the most awesome cereal, because they're going to tell me that because that's their goal, is to make me buy that thing. And as you go through development in these cultures that are heavily mass marketed, then it's really important people learn this, right? It's a really important part of critical thinking, is being able to figure out, is that a commercial? Because if it's commercial, they're going to tell me it's the best ever, and I have to have this thing because that's their job. That I need that car, I have to have that toy. If I don't have those tennis shoes, my life is over. If I don't wear that type of clothing, I'm a loser. I mean, they're telling me this because they want me to buy this thing. In fact, they need me to buy this thing. If nobody buys what they're selling, eventually they're going to go out of business. So learning the difference between somebody who's telling me something and their motive is for me to buy it isn't anything other than healthy development, because I need to be able to use those critical thinking skills to be able to figure out what's really going to be the best for me versus what somebody's telling me because it's an advertisement, right? What's their motive? Sometimes people tell you things, they're trying to take advantage of you. So let's say, and we talk about this a lot in our, our business workplace politics discussions, right? So there's somebody at work and they're looking around and they're being very brutal, right? And who they're trying to sabotage because they're looking at their own career. And if they think that you're smarter than them or better than them, they're going to try to do something to get you out of that department or out of that area, because otherwise you may get that promotion and they want the promotion. So yeah, they will come to you and say to you, oh, I saw the draft that we're going to submit to the manager, but I just really was disappointed. That was really low caliber, work. Okay. Why are they telling me this? Because they want me to not submit that really awesome draft, because they don't want the boss to see it, because they don't want me to get the promotion and the accolade. They want to get it. So they're trying to, sometimes they'll use the term in slang terms, psych me out. And what they mean is they're trying to use sort of psychology on you to make you sabotage and turn against yourself to benefit them. Right? They want me to think that my work is yucky and horrible because they want me to then withdraw it or not present it with confidence, so that they can swoop in and steal my idea. I mean, there's reasons that they're doing this. It's not because my work is really horrible. In fact, it may be the opposite. My work may be outstanding. And that may be their motive. So why do I believe I'm not good enough from somebody who's has a whole entire motive, right, at work, trying to take advantage of me? Or take the promotion for themselves. Golly, that's who I'm going to trust. That's who I'm going to believe about whether or not my work's good enough and I'm good enough. So if somebody's trying to sell me something, is someone trying to take advantage of me? Is someone trying to use me for their own motive? And this is where a lot of the family of origin issues can come in, and caregivers, so people in the foster care system. And when you run into somebody, especially adults with little children, who are very abusive and give them these messages, you are nothing, I can't believe you, look how skinny you are, or look how fat you are, look how your skin color is too light, it's too dark, you need to get darker, you need to get lighter, you need to get larger, you need to get smaller, your hair is too short, it's too long, it's too curly, it's too straight. I mean, people just set this stuff in little kids' minds. And the sad thing is, you'll have somebody who will have said something, 50 years ago to somebody when they were 5 years old. And here this person is 55 years old, and that never went away. And that's what is in their head defining themselves. Oh, look at you. Oh, yeah, the doctor said you're in great health, and just ran a marathon, but look at you. You're ugly. And it was because some person told them something, decades ago. Now, here's the thing. Why would an adult do something like that to a child? Why would an adult go out of their way to tell someone they're not good enough? Now, most of us would think, well, that's cruel and it's abusive. Well, yeah. And it's unnecessary. It's not like the child should be competing with the adult for the promotion, like at the office example. Yet, in some families, you do have this. You have some families where adults are jealous of the children. And they'll be jealous and say, well, that child takes so much attention away from this other adult, maybe my spouse, that I'll do what I can to sabotage them, right? I don't want them to get all that attention. That sounds very weird, but it happens all the time around the world. There's lots of fiction works about these types of narratives. You also have situations where people who are adults never dealt with their own ghosts of not good enough. So somebody told them this when they were 5, now they're 25, and they're going to go around and do the same thing to somebody else because they're still in all this pain. And all they know how to do, because they never stopped and took responsibility for their actions, and worked on healing themselves and changing their narrative, is they're going to just turn around and inflict the same pain inside of them on other people. Unhappy people are unhappy people, and they spread unhappiness. I can't take somebody that's unhealthy and and make a magically healthy environment. It doesn't exist. They're unhealthy. They're self-destructive. They're abusive. They don't think they're good enough. So you're not going to get them to be able to be some, fantastically even-keeled, healthy, empowering manager. They're not going to be able to be a leader in a household or in a family. They don't have the ability and the skills to do it because they think that they're not good enough. So as long as they believe that, everything else that they touch in their world, it's like the narratives in fiction. Everything you touch turns to gold, right? Well, everything they touch turns to pain because that's all they have. The question, though, is why would you believe them? There are even people that I'll talk to about this. We'll figure out who it is, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, it was my sister," and then they'll say, "Yeah, but she's an alcoholic, and she was drunk every time she said that." Or, okay, well, why would you believe somebody who's drunk? Why would you believe somebody who's under the influence of alcohol or drugs? Why would you believe somebody who you're fully aware isn't giving you good information? Would you trust them to tell you, how to invest your money? No, because you know that they don't know. So why on earth are you trusting them with something way more important than that, which is the definition of yourself and your value? What on earth? It's the most, again, it's when you think about it, it doesn't make any sense. That's not a credible source. That somebody is trying to sell me something. In some societies, as I mentioned earlier, for whatever historical reasons and social cultural reasons, societies have hierarchies, and they decide collectively sort of who's at the top and who's in the middle and who's at their bottom. And then they reinforce that through all types of messaging. So like I said, in some industrialized nations, it's literally messaging. So if it's interesting because I travel a lot, relatively speaking, right? So I'll sit in some parts of the world and you'll be in the nation or the city, and you look around and the people will look you sort of one way. And you look on their television, which I watch in the hotels, obviously, and all their actors and famous people that that are on their media look totally different. They may be a different skin tone. They may have a different hair texture. They may have a different eye shape or different features, their cheeks. And the interesting thing is that's what the society has determined for whatever reason is what you should aspire to be. Even though when you walk around in real life, you look around and you don't see that many people that look like that. And maybe that's it. Maybe because it's rare. It's so special. I don't know. But you go to different parts of the world and you'll see this. I've seen television commercials in some parts of the world. You see this in the U.S. a lot, where people put ads to make yourself darker. So for fair-skinned people, I guess the message is that your fair skin isn't, I guess, good enough. So, go out and tan yourself. And if you don't want to go in the sun and tan yourself with sort of heightened risk of health issues, then you can use different creams and everything. So you can go out and be in the sun and try to diminish negative health consequences, like with the cancer. And then they'll have other businesses where if you don't want to go outside in natural light, then you can go in the business and still try to get your skin darker. And then if you don't want to do outside or in artificial light and like a tanning salon, then you can actually buy creams that you can put on that'll sort of, they just sort of like a paint almost, make you look darker, sort of temporarily. And then you have the opposite. I've been in other countries where the everybody wants to be fairer skin, lighter skin. So it's the opposite commercial. So the commercials will be for bleaching creams. They make yourself more fair, and what can you do? And so it's interesting. And I hope as you travel the world, which I've encouraged in other programs that you do as much as you want to, but it's one of the best educations ever. It's amazing what you learn about yourself that isn't accurate as you travel. But it's neat because you'll go to, like I said, some parts of the world you see these commercials and they're just pushing that light skin or fair skin is not good enough. You must do everything you can to be darker. And you go to other countries and they're pushing the opposite message that it's horrible to be rich, darker, deeper skin. You must have fairer skin, and so they're bleaching. And it's fascinating. I'm if I ever have the time, I'd love to just, and I'm sure other people have done this, right? Like just go collect all these messages and just play them next to each other. And it's so contradictory. It's odd, but humans, right? And in some parts of the world, it's imperative that you have a certain type of nose or a certain type of lips or a certain type of eyes. And you want to be larger size in some parts of the world. If you're smaller framed, then you're depressed because you're sad and you want to be larger. Other parts of the world, you must be smaller. And so everybody works really hard, so it must be smaller. It's, some parts of the world, your hair texture, which sounds like a stupid thing to care about, honestly. All of this sounds really stupid in terms of stupidity of what can you do? You're fair skinned. That should be fine. You look fine. I don't get it. You're richer, deeper skin tone. You look fine. I don't get it. Your eye shape is fine. Your nose is fine. Your lips are fine. Your body size and frame is fine. Goodness gracious, your hair texture. Same thing. Some people, same thing. You walk through media and it's obsession with your hair must be straighter. So people have chemicals that they will put on their hair, their own natural hair, to destroy sort of the natural curliness to make it straighter. And then if they don't use the chemicals, or sometimes they do use the chemicals, although they could cause damage, then they'll use implements, so you'll use tools to make your hair heat, or tools to make your hair straighter, because it's important that it's straighter. And then you go to the other media and you see the exact same opposite, where people are saying straight, and they have commercials. And I'll see this in the U.S., right? Commercials like, oh, your hair's so straight, it's horrible, it's so flat, right? They have put chemicals on their hair to make it curly. So the same thing, you destroy your sort of natural hair texture to force it into this curliness, right? Oh, I need volume. And then you have implements, the same thing, right? So that you use heat and other tools to make your hair temporarily curly. And then it's just this weird sort of never-ending quest to be good enough. And the thing is, who defines good enough? It's usually multiple sources. So sometimes it's somebody that you actually had one-on-one interaction with who might have said to you directly, okay, you were a horrible failure. You're not good enough at all. Sometimes you'd be the larger community, maybe a teacher or someone in a group said something that made you feel, oh no, I'm not good enough. And then certainly in the media, or just the cultural narrative, if it's not necessarily, through mass media, the cultural expectation, people know everywhere you go in the world. I love this. Just talking to people, just anywhere, when you're walking around, or, in a cab or a hotel or in a store, people know in that culture what the expectation is. They know it because they grew up there. And whatever it is, if you aren't it, then they're going to do everything they can to make it, everyone will know it. Everyone's going to know that you're this thing, you're not good enough. And what I'm trying to say is, when you step back and you get perspective, you realize it's all just capricious. It's all on a whim. It's all totally arbitrary. And then if you moved around and you tried to fulfill all of these different places, and you're bleaching yourself and you're darkening yourself and you're changing your hair texture curly, or you're changing your hair texture shorter, straighter, and you're trying to change the features of your face, and you're trying to change your body frame, and you're trying to change your voice, people, oh, that whole thing there, accents and dialect people use, all this judgment. I think it's not realistic unless you're one of those people who volunteers for some exploratory scientific, you're going to go to Mars with the first little group of people, or you're on one of these scientific expeditions under the sea, or, in one of the, North Pole or South Pole or something, where there literally are only like 4 other humans. Maybe then it could be possible to create some sort of little mini society where you can minimize some of this. But other than those really isolated situations, or you're on the space station or something, and even in those, I bet that they're develop these hierarchies. Somebody wants to be good enough. Somebody wants to be better than other people. Somebody feels they're not good enough. I don't think trying to eradicate the messaging is necessarily the first line of defense. Now, some messaging is so offensive and so destructive that, yes, we should probably move toward, as humans, trying to be a little bit more inclusive and accepting of people. Some of the messages people have when you go and you are just shockingly, wow. It's a society telling people, we wish you had never been born. You're this horrible because of whatever, your belief or your appearance or, whatever. Who you love, whatever. Okay. So some of that I would think, yes, we should be working on that. But in the interim, while we're working on that, individually, you have got to take control of your own life and your own thoughts. Who gave you the thought you're not good enough? And why on earth are you believing this and holding on to it? You don't have to. And I would argue that if you sit and think about it, oh, well, okay, media, the culture told me I'm not good enough. Because everybody that in this culture has different types of eye shape, and my eye shape is horrible, so now I need to go get plastic surgery. Really? Why would you believe that? Remember, when a society makes a narrative, it's just like that relative who's full of pain and trying to find some place to let the pain out. The society is the same way. So societies do determine, and it changes over time, but they'll determine, who's, quote, the best and who's the worst. But why do you believe that? Why are you buying into this? Now, we do other programs if your society has erected sort of legal and structural challenges to stop you. If you say to me, hey, look, in my society with my nose like it is, I can't even get a job. I'm going to be homeless on the streets, right? So I get plastic surgery or I do something, but it's that serious. That's a different level of obstacle, sort of institutionalized, ism based on where you really cannot do anything. In some societies, they even call people who are the worst group, the lowest caste, they're untouchables, right? They're so awful. I just had that song come into my head, that old song, I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony, right? I'd like this to all change like magically, and hopefully it will change over time so that we can stop being so destructive to ourselves as cultures and societies and turning on people and making people have so much self-hatred over all this stuff, right? But in the interim, while I'm waiting on that to happen, I am on my knees. You know what? I'm literally right now in the studio getting on my knees, and I'm seriously right now, and this is hard because I have my knees. I was born with my kneecaps not in the best place, but I got on my knees to seriously beg you. I am begging you, while we're all waiting and working towards stopping some of this destructive behavior with societies and cultures and groups and norms and everything, please just stop it with you. Let the peace start with you. You are good enough. How do I know that? Why? Because why not? Why not you? Who decides? You decide. I have other shows we talk about this. You're going to decide you're good enough. And what the media says, or what your relative said, or what your fifth grade teacher said, or what your first boss said, or what your boss said to you yesterday, or what the person said to you on the freeway when they yelled at you out the window, or what somebody said to you when you were at the store. I don't care, and you should not care. Because remember, people with pain, that's what they're carrying around. They're in pain. We have empathy for them. We hope and we work to help them change that. And you and I are working for those little bits, just little bits of joy. But we cannot do this if we are self-destructive, because we are just mired in this belief that we're not good enough. I want you to take that belief. I want you to ball it up in trash, sort of figuratively, and I want you to throw it in the trash. And I want you to throw it out into the trash heap or burn it. You're here. I'm here. Okay? So now that we're here, through whatever way that happened, which is beyond our control, why not make it better? Why not start with a new approach? I'm going to believe someone that I totally trust and that has my best interest at heart and will never ever leave me or reject me, and that is me. And I'm going to start with, I am good enough. And I'm going to start working my way down the list of the things that are taking my time and my negative energy, that are weapons I'm using against myself, that either society wants me to use, or some pain-laden relative wants me to use, or who knows. But stop it. reclaim your life. For who? For you. Start here. And all these really potentially great things can happen. If you have changed to a new belief system that you define, that you are good enough. Why not? And you know what? Why not? I'm just leaving it at that. I'm not trying to argue, they're wrong about what your appearance should be, or I can't even touch any of that. All I'm saying is, yes, right now, as you are right this moment, you are good enough. And if you really believe and move toward that as a new core definition of yourself, then you aren't walking around with all this pain, and you're not going to be spreading it to other people or generations or people at your business. Your whole opportunity for potentially a different type of life, and I'm going to be very honest, a different type of existence opens up. So I beg you here at the end of the program, again, think about it and go write this down and work through this on your own. Who told you you weren't good enough? I want you to list all of them. Every instance of it that you can think of. And I want you to go back through that list and then go ask for each one of those instances, why do you believe them? Why do you believe a media? Why do you believe an advertisement? Why do you believe a television commercial? Why do you believe a stereotype? Or why do you believe a prejudice? Why do you believe this? Why do you believe somebody who was a perfectionist? Why do you believe somebody who was mired in misery and pain? Why do you believe them? What was their motive? It wasn't the best interest of you. I'm telling you this right now. And start to attack these ideas based on logic. Because when you go through it, you'll realize, well, why was I believing that person? Why was I believing that entity? They had bad interests. They were trying to take advantage or exploit people. They were trying to hurt people. They had financial interests. They had political gains. And when you do that and you make it real and you can look at that list, you begin to see how it doesn't make any sense at all that you believe somebody. They're not a good source for anything. They certainly aren't a good source for you. Who you are. You are the best source. So I am just eternally appreciative that you joined me. I do encourage you to go to CourtneyAnderson.com, share your feedback, ideas, suggestions. But I, again, got on my knees. I'm up off my knees, obviously, now. And I really cannot underscore enough how imperative it is that you examine this. And you're an intelligent person. So look and ask yourself, why would I believe this source? And then start working daily to change this. You are good enough. You're more than good enough. Thank you so much again for being part of the program today.